Hello, brilliant entrepreneur. It's Tash Corbin here, and welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 349, which means you can find all the relevant links and show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/349. Now, you're going to want to take note of that episode number today because I am interviewing multi-million-dollar business owner Brigit Esselmont. She is the CEO and founder of Biddy Tarot, and that business actually had its inception story way back in 1999. She's been in business for a long time, in the episode, Brigit talks more about the origin story of her business, so I won't say anything further than that. But I do think it's important that you come and check out the show notes for today's episode because we'll have links to Brigit's books, her tarot cards, which we talk about in the episode, as well as how to sign up for her free resources and her weekly tarot card that you can get in your inbox. And Brigit is actually one of the speakers at the Heart-Centered Business Conference in May 2023. And you'll be able to learn from this amazing, experienced, multi-million-dollar earning CEO of Biddy Tarot. And if you use Brigit's coupon code BIDDY50, you'll get $50 off your ticket to conference as well. So make sure you go and check out the show notes for today's episode at tashcorbin.com/349. We'll have all of those links laid out for you over there. And without further ado, let's dive into this epic interview. I'm Tash Corbin, and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special spotlight episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. I'm joined today by the amazing Brigit Esselmont from Biddy Tarot, and Brigit is also our most recently announced speaker at the Heart-Centered Business Conference. Welcome, Brigit.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, Brigit, your business story is one of my most favoritist business stories, especially the birth story of Biddy Tarot. Do you want to give everyone a little summary of what Biddy Tarot does and how it came about?
Yeah, so it actually goes all the way back to 1999 when the internet was fresh and new and we had yellow highlighted banners and all sorts of fun stuff on the websites. And so at that time, I was just learning how to read tarot for myself. And I thought, you know what, why don't I give this whole internet website thing a go? And I just started posting on my own website what I was learning about the tarot cards. And I just did that year on year. I didn't really expect anyone to read it. But over time, the audience started to grow, and I started to realize that actually this was an asset. This is something that I could share beyond just me having a little hobby or something fun on the side. And in fact, it was Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek book that really inspired me to go, okay, I've got something here that's of value. And if I can really amplify it and double down on the things that are having the biggest impact, then I can start to reach more people. So kind of like fast forward 10 years, that's how slow the overnight journey to success really is. I started to do just some basic SEO on my website, and within a week or two, I was in the top rankings of Google for all of the tarot card meanings. And from there, our traffic really started to grow. I started to create things like ebooks, and then I did courses and online classes and then memberships. And then fast forward again to now, we have over 15 million people that come and visit Biddy Tarot every year. And they're coming because they want to learn more about what the tarot cards mean. Yep. And we have had over, I think it's about 10,000 students already who've taken our programs. Because what we're doing is we're teaching people to read tarot, and we're helping to really bring tarot into the mainstream as an empowering tool to connect with your intuition and to really manifest your future instead of just kind of predict your future or tell your future. So we're really playing on that difference between, you know, tarot is a fortune telling tool. Sure, it can be used that way. Yep, all good. But I much rather use tarot as something to really manifest what we want to create. So that's really the core essence of Biddy Tarot and who we are today.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I love that whenever I want to look up the meaning of a tarot card, it's your website that invariably comes up at the top. And I don't think anyone will ever beat that level of history as well as that level of optimization to try and take over that top spot on Google, which is just so powerful. You must be so proud that, like, 1999 Brigit took the leap and popped these things on a website. What a great thing to be able to look back on. Hey?
And I think it's also a testament to sometimes we dabble, like we play and we do fun stuff. And for me, I never had a business plan. I mean, we do now, but we're in the future. But certainly at the beginning, I didn't go, where's the gap in the market? How am I going to exploit that gap? You know, none of that. I just like did stuff that felt really good. It felt like fun. And then I was strategic about the decisions that I made about what I would focus on and channel my energy into. And that's how it really grew. So I think oftentimes, you know, we're just tinkering away at certain things. We don't actually know or realize the potential that that little thing has. Some of it goes to nothing. Some of it can go into something like really amazing and big and have this huge positive impact.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about in today's episode was this concept of intuition in business, because I know that's something you're very passionate about. And as someone who's been in business for as long as you have, I'm sure there are times where there's big decisions to be made, or there's big ideas to follow through with, or decide whether you're going to follow through with. Do you see intuition as something that is like a part of your business, or a driver of your decision making in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has to be. And I think often intuition is like this untapped superpower that is available to all of us. You don't need to have like special, you know, gifts or have the psychic grandmother and what have you. If you've got all of that, fantastic, you know, good on you. But you don't have to have all of that. And I think as entrepreneurs, and particularly like heart-centered, heart-based entrepreneurs, you know, there's so much of us in our business. And so if we're not including our intuition in the way that we're working with our business and interacting and, you know, creating the relationship with our customers and so on, if we don't have that sort of personal aspect, the intuitive aspect, I think we're missing out on a lot. So for us, like at Biddy Tarot, intuition plays a role like all of the time. I always have deck of tarot cards. Oh, look, it's the Biddy Tarot deck.
It's your pretty tarot cards. Yay.
Right now.
We'll link to those in the show notes, everyone.
Awesome. But you know, like quite seriously, I do have this deck because I often pull cards as I go. Even today, I had a couple of meetings that were around some very new and fresh like business opportunities. And I just like to pull a card before I go into those, just to sort of suss out, you know, what's the energy around this meeting, what's the energy around the opportunity, and so on. Even, you know, as we do hiring, of course, it does not determine our hiring decisions. We're very much within the boundaries of the law, but it certainly gives us like some information and just another layer to look at things. And I know like when there have been times where I've tried to push something, but maybe my intuition has said, don't think this is quite right. It often, you know, the wheels fall off and it doesn't work out.
Yeah. And that actually brings me to one of the questions that I wanted to ask as well, which is sometimes I find we have this resistance to trusting ourselves and trusting that intuition in our business. Why do you think people resist their intuition so much, and how can we stop doing that?
Yeah, it's this balance between like ego and intuition, I think. Because and even, you know, sometimes we can call it like our higher self and our lower self. Ego definitely plays a role. It's important. We don't want to like eliminate it. But what can sometimes happen is our ego wants things to be a certain way. We want to look a certain way. We want to have a certain status. We want things to be like, we want to feel like we're controlling everything. But oftentimes that kind of energy around the ego can come from a place of fear or missing out. You know, And we take actions that may actually be off track and out of alignment for us, just simply because we're worried about what might happen, or we're in a scarcity mindset. Then you've got, on the other hand, you've got your intuition, which is really from this place of love, and it's in your most highest and best good. Yeah. The tricky thing with the intuition, and where you might feel guided around your intuition, is that path can be almost like at conflict with what the ego wants. Yeah. So the ego might want more control, or it might want things to be a certain way right now, or it might be like, but I just want the status of this. I want it to look like this. Intuition typically is thinking of our longer term path and what's right for us in the bigger picture, which may mean that we have to make some difficult decisions now that will have a greater impact in the future. And so I think that's where we can often get that resistance. One of the stories that I tell around this is like choosing a book publisher. And this is a few years ago. I had a number of different proposals on the table. And I had one that I was like, this is a sure bet. I'm sure, like, this has got to be it, right? And I was like, yes, this is it. So I pull all the cards. And then I get something like, I think it was the 3 of Swords for this publisher. I'm like, what? Try and like make those cards go away. Like, oh, they don't mean anything. Oh, I just got that wrong. Anyway, luckily I sort of wrote it down, because a few weeks later, it ended up that publisher was not the right fit for me at all. But my ego wanted it, because it was like there was status that was associated with this publisher. And whereas the other one was probably a little bit more like an underdog, but ended up being the most perfect fit. And not really an underdog, because they're actually a very like large publishing house. But in the end, it just showed me that sometimes like our mind and our brain thinks one thing is the right thing. But if we really drop down into our heart and our bellies, that's where we get the most guidance around, okay, is this actually a fit for me versus do I just think it is?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's such a good example. And I know lots of people who've had that same experience but they didn't listen, or they didn't note it down. And when they look back, they can see all the signs were there that, maybe that wasn't the right decision, or they should have gone a different way. So, as we embark upon business, and as you're a CEO of a business, as you're working your business, are there certain things, you said that you have the cards there, are there other things that you do to ensure that you're paying attention to your intuition, that you're paying attention to those signs that are coming up?
Yeah, so one other aspect is like managing time versus managing energy. And I've been very much indoctrinated around managing time. I think many of us have, right? So managing time for me means like, oh, well, I'm doing a full-time work, I'm doing my 40 hours, and I will make sure I've done 8 hours every day, and I'm not really finished until I've done 8 hours. And I know I'm talking to the right person here, because you're like, what on earth is that? And then on the flip side, you've got managing energy, which means that one day your energy could be so high that working 10, 12 hours might feel like the most amazing thing ever. And then the next day you might be like, oh, I can't, I'm just going through the sludge, right? And so 4 hours might be more appropriate. And why I think this is important with intuition is because when you make that shift to actually just tuning into your own energy, you're starting to again now just trust yourself and empower yourself about what's right for you. When we think about time, it's actually an external construct. It's something that's sitting outside of ourselves. Yeah. So anytime you're feeling that energy of like you're relying on something solely that's outside of you, typically you're off track. But when you're actually relying on something that's within, that comes through that reflection within, then you're back on track and back in alignment. So managing energy for me helps me stay more in connection with my intuition, because I'm tuning into how I'm feeling, and then I'm also giving that time and space. And I know like creatively as well, yesterday I was trying to like push something. I was like, I really want to finish this today, but I could just feel my creativity going, yeah. Okay, no, I'll just go to the beach. And then lo and behold, I'm like, oh, great, downloads are happening at the beach. I'm just writing it all down again, because like I was managing my energy. That's what really allows that intuition to flow.
Yeah, that's absolutely gorgeous. Now, given that you've been in business for so long and you've got so much experience building Biddy Tarot to a multi-million dollar business, I'd love to know from you, like, what were some of the challenging times that you've faced as an online business owner? Often we see so much about, oh, this success and this success, and oh, we'll pump up all of your successes, of course. But I'd love to know from you, like, what have you found to be some of the trickier times managing a multi-million dollar business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish like we would have more conversations about this, because I think oftentimes you can kind of get put up on the pedestal. Oh, wow, you know, you're a seven-figure business. That's so cool. And like, yeah, it is cool. And everything has light and shade, right? And we all make decisions about what we want to bring into our lives and what we don't. And so I think one of the hardest times for me with Biddy Tarot was post-pandemic. So pandemic time, awesome. Like there was just so much growth. We just exceeded our goals. Like there was no tomorrow. And of course, me being very optimistic, I thought, great, you know, we're on this massive growth trajectory. Okay, let's build up the team. We need everyone on board so that we can do all of the really cool things that we have in mind. And so by 2021, I had a team of 30 people who were working in Biddy.
Yep.
And that was, you know, things like help desk. We had a great help desk team. We had a large marketing team with different functions and specialities and so on, tech, all of the things, operations. We even got to a point of having an HR manager. And that's when I was like, oh, actually, I wonder if we've gone a little bit too far here. And in fact, it turned out that we had, right? So after like pandemic, I see it as kind of the normalizing a bit about coming back to say 2019. And by that point, I realized if we keep going in the direction that we're going with our costs and our revenue, which was starting to just plateau a little bit more rather than being on that level, then we're going to run out of money and we're going to go out of business. And I've been in business for 20 years and I was like, I am not letting that happen. Like, no way. And so I had to make a really hard decision to let go of, I think it was 10, 12 of our team members who were really great team members. But over a few months, we had to cut down the team because we would have gone out of business. And there was no way I was going to let that happen. And it did mean letting go of some really awesome people. What was beautiful about that, though, is we had some really honest, transparent conversations, and I was part of most of those conversations. And just, you know, the goodwill and the gratitude of like, I'm just so grateful I could work as part of the team. I get it. I get why we're here, and, you know, I'm okay in like leaving and going on to something different. So hard at the time, very, very stressful, but in the long run, it actually worked out really nicely.
Yeah. And it's so gorgeous to be able to hear about those experiences as well. It's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about helping women in particular in the business space, because we hear so many stories of redundancies and, you know, teams shrinking where it's not handled in that transparent and open communication way. I've had friends who turned up to work and their pass didn't work. So, you know, there are good ways to do this and there are not so great ways to do this. But I think it's something that we take so seriously as business owners, and we remember the human factor of what it is that we're doing and the people that we have on our team and those sorts of things. So I think it's just such a beautiful example of downsizing doesn't always have to be the end of the world. It can actually be a really smart business move. And it also doesn't have to be done terribly or nastily or, you know, in that really shocking way for the people who are part of the team as well. So I think it's a really great example of, you know, someone being an actual heart-centered leader as well as an online business owner. So thank you so much for sharing, Brigit. So another question I wanted to ask you about then was like, what are some of the big successes that you've experienced? What are some of those moments where you're like, I can't believe we've pulled this off, or yeah, this has actually happened?
I think everything. Quite seriously, you know, again, like just having shared like the origin story of starting in 1999 with just no idea of what it would turn into, quite literally, like every milestone along the way has been like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, wow. But some of the big things would be like in 2017 is when we had our first $1 million year. I just felt such immense gratitude for that. I left my corporate job in 2012 so I could do Biddy Tarot full time. And at that point, I think business income was somewhere around 100,000.
Yep.
And I thought, you know what, if that's all that happens, that's great. That's, you know, that was pretty much my corporate salary covered. But it just continued to grow from there. So that felt like a lot of validation that I'd made the right decision back in 2012. And that I and my team was really capable of creating a really solid business that had longevity and sustainability over time. I think getting published with Running Press with Everyday Tarot book and then the Everyday Tarot deck in 2018, that was a massive milestone. We've since sold, I think, over 20,000 copies of the book and 400,000 copies of the tarot deck.
Wow, that's
insane.
Awesome. Yep.
And it got into like stores. It's in like TJ Maxx, Target, Urban Outfitters. That was a real dream come true. And just, you know, we've got over 1,000 certified Biddy Tarot advisors now, and that number continues to grow. And so these are not only students who've just enrolled in the program, they've actually done all of the work, they've completed the program, they've passed the exam, and they've been reading for other people. And now they're out in the world creating this positive impact with their tarot readings. So I feel so proud of those certified readers and advisors. And again, it really feeds my soul around the ripple effect that we can have in our businesses. Because it starts as you as the seed, and for a little bit of a time, it feels like it's only you and your mum. But over time, that grows and it grows, and you start to have people that you've impacted, and then those people impact more people, and that's where that growth really comes from.
Yeah, that's absolutely gorgeous. Thank you so much, Brigit, for sharing all of this. And for those of you who are coming along to the Heart Centered Business Conference, Brigit is also going to be speaking there. And Brigit's topic is it shiny and new, tried and true versus shiny and new? So given your wealth of experience, Brigit, being able to tell, is something a fad? Is it something that is going to stand the test of time in your business? And I think it's going to be a really fascinating workshop for us all to participate in. So if you haven't yet got your ticket to the Heart Centered Business Conference and you want to come and hear from Brigit, plus our other amazing speakers, we'll put a link in the show notes of today's episode to conference so you can check out tickets, but also be sure to use Brigit's coupon code, which is Biddy50, and we'll include that there as well. That gets you $50 off your ticket so that you can come and join us there. Now, Brigit, you have some really cool free resources that people can also access over on your website. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about those as well?
Yes, so we've got a lot of different free resources, which is great. But if you're someone who's kind of interested or new to tarot, then I'd really encourage you to sign up for our weekly newsletter, because every week we pull a tarot card, and we talk about what that means for you and in this week ahead. So it's a really nice way of just getting to know what tarot is about. Yeah. But if you're someone that's been reading for a while and you want to deepen your practice, then we also have things like there's a tarot card meanings reference guide that's absolutely free. And we've got some free trainings and so on. So that's over at biddytarot.com/free-tarot-resources. And thank goodness that'll be in the chat in the show notes.
Yes, we'll have all of that with the show notes of today's episode, so you don't have to remember that big long link, and you'll be able to access that. And also, I can highly recommend being on the mailing list for Biddy Tarot as well. You get first to know about some of the cool stuff that's coming, as well as that lovely weekly tarot as well. So that's gorgeous. Now, Brigit, one of the things that we do at the end of each podcast episode is I ask you, if I was to quote you on something, what would you like me to say?
Oh, gosh. Okay, not that.
No
you know what? Something that I often say is it's all an experiment. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, like, everything I've done has just felt like one big experiment. And when when you approach life and business in that way, there cannot be any failure, right?
Yeah.
Try something, you're like, oh, this is an experiment. I've got my data. Okay, now I'm moving to the next thing. Oh, now that's another experiment. And yeah, I think that's just really how I navigate business in particular. Is there's no failures. It's really about collecting data as you go, and then doing the things that are really working, and not doing so much of the things that don't work in your experiment.
It's just an experiment. Let's see what we can figure out from here. That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Brigit, for jumping onto the podcast. We, of course, will see you at the Heart Centered Business Conference as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this episode. And until next time, we cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.